Aminata sat on the edge of her small apartment bed, staring at the crumpled bank statement in her hand. $3,500. Her last bit of savings. Every month she scrimped and saved, hoping to build a little safety net for herself, but her family's needs always seemed bigger. Bills, groceries, her younger brother's school fees. She had always been the one to step in quietly without complaint. Her parents never asked directly. They didn't need to. She knew their patterns, their desires, their comforts, and she felt this heavy, unshakable responsibility. Part of her burned with frustration. She needed that money, needed to breathe, but another part, the part that had been raised to care first, guilt her into sending it anyway. She imagined her parents relieved, smiling as she handed over the cash, and for a fleeting moment, pride mixed with exhaustion. This was her life. Small sacrifices, invisible gratitude, and the constant tug between duty and dreams. Aminata knew the routine well. Every week, her phone buzzed with messages from her parents. Requests for money, little reminders about bills, and sometimes hints about things they really wanted but couldn't afford. It never felt like just asking. It was expectation wrapped in a polite tone. She felt the tension building in her chest every time she opened those messages. Part of her wanted to say no, to finally keep some money for herself, but another part, the part that hated conflict, knew that giving kept the peace. She had learned long ago that refusing would mean weeks of subtle guilt trips and quiet disappointment. Her mother, Mariama, had a way of making her feel small without saying it directly. Over lunch one Sunday, Mariama glanced at Aminata as she declined a dessert, her eyes sparkling with a teasing tone. "Look at your brother," she said, pointing to the younger boy laughing across the table. "He enjoys life without worrying about money. You could learn a thing or two." Aminata's stomach twisted. She wanted to explain, to tell her mother how she had saved and sacrificed, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she forced a smile, handed over another sum for groceries, and nodded along. Inside, she felt a mixture of pride and bitterness. Proud that she was doing the right thing, bitter that her sacrifices went unnoticed, even subtly mocked, while her brother was praised for simply being. Aminata walked into the bank, her heart heavy but determined. She had made the decision days ago, though it hadn't gotten any easier. $3,500. Her last bit of savings. She counted it slowly at the counter, the crisp notes feeling heavier than they should. Each bill represented months of careful budgeting, skipped lunches and late nights figuring out how to stretch her meager paycheck. And now she was handing it over to her parents, convinced that it would help them keep the lights on, pay overdue bills and maybe ease their worries. When she gave the money to her mother, Mariama's eyes lit up, her smile wide and satisfied. Aminata felt a flicker of pride. She was doing the right thing, sacrificing for her family, putting their needs above her own. Felt noble even if it hurt. She told herself that she would manage somehow later. Selflessness, she reminded herself, was a virtue, and she had plenty of it. But as she walked back to her small apartment, the weight of reality pressed down. Her account was nearly empty, her own bills waiting patiently at home, and she knew she was stepping into a week of scrimping and borrowing just to keep afloat. Still, she held her head high, telling herself it was worth it. Helping her family mattered more than her own comfort, or so she hoped. In that moment, pride and worry sat side by side, a constant reminder of the cost of giving everything. Aminata sat on her worn couch, mindlessly scrolling through her social media feed, trying to distract herself from the stress of an empty bank account. She froze mid-scroll when she saw the first photo. Her parents smiling under the sun in Zanzibar, glasses of champagne in hand, a luxury resort behind them. She blinked, certain she was imagining things. But then came another post and another, jet skis, fancy dinners, beachfront cocktails, and carefully curated captions bragging about how well-deserved the trip was. Her chest tightened and a cold anger bubbled up. She stared at the screen, scrolling again to make sure she wasn't missing something. Not a single post mentioned her contribution, the money she had worked so hard to save and give them. It was as if her sacrifices never existed. Every smile in those photos felt like a slap in the face, a reminder that while she had been cutting corners and worrying about bills, her parents had been living it up. Aminata sank back into the couch, feeling a mix of disbelief, hurt, and betrayal. She kept clicking through, seeing them laughing together, carefree, while she counted coins for her own meals. The pride she had felt days ago, the warmth from giving, turned icy. She realized that her efforts had been invisible, and suddenly all the tension, guilt, and exhaustion of her constant giving crashed down on her. The social media feed, once just a distraction, now felt like a window to a world where her generosity had gone unnoticed. Aminata sat in her dimly lit room, staring blankly at the wall, the images of her parents in Zanzibar still flashing in her mind. Her hands trembled slightly, anger and disbelief twisting together. She felt betrayed. How could they enjoy luxury while she struggled, giving everything she had to keep them afloat? Her chest ached, and a lump rose in her throat as memories of her sacrifices replayed like a cruel movie. The nights she skipped dinner to save money, the weekends spent catching up on freelance work instead of resting, the small joys she denied herself, all for a family that didn't even acknowledge her efforts. She felt the sting of invisibility. Each thoughtful gesture, each selfless act had gone unnoticed. Even subtle remarks from her mother, praising her brother while mocking her, now echoed sharply in her mind. Anger bubbled up, hot and raw, but alongside it was heartbreak, a hollow ache that no amount of money could fill. Aminata debated what to do. Should she confront them, demand an explanation, make them see the reality of her sacrifices? Or should she stay silent, swallow the hurt, and let the betrayal sit quietly like a wound that would eventually heal? Her mind raced with possibilities, but every option seemed heavy with risk and pain. She realized she couldn't ignore what she felt, but acting on it meant stepping into a storm she wasn't sure she was ready for. The conflict inside her burned brighter than any anger. Loyalty, love, and self-respect tangled together in a knot she didn't yet know how to untangle. Aminata met Fatou at their favorite cafe, a small sunlit spot tucked into a quiet street in Abuja. She stirred her coffee absent-mindedly, words stuck in her throat, until finally she let them tumble out. She told Fatou everything, the savings she had given, the late nights and sacrifices, and the shock of seeing her parents living it up in Zanzibar without a single word of thanks. Her voice shook, and for the first time in days, she let herself feel the anger, the hurt, and the disbelief all at once. Fatou listened quietly, her eyes soft but serious. When Aminata finished, Fatou reached across the table, gripping her hand. "Amina," she said gently, using her nickname, "you can't let this break you. They've made their choices, but you can make yours. Use this anger, this hurt, to fuel something for you. Your own life, your own future." She leaned back, sipping her coffee. "Think about independence. Professional independence. Start building something that's yours. Don't let their selfishness keep you small." Aminata felt a spark, a small flame of possibility that she hadn't allowed herself to consider. Fatou's words cut through the fog of disappointment, offering clarity. The betrayal didn't have to define her. She could turn it into motivation, channeling all the frustration and heartbreak into creating her own path. For the first time in days, Aminata felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to sacrifice herself to be a good daughter. Maybe she could live for herself too. Aminata sat at her small desk, laptop open, scribbling notes in a worn notebook. After talking to Fatou, an idea had taken root, growing clearer with each passing day. She would start her own business, a boutique financial consultancy called Savvy Sisters, aimed at helping young women in West Africa manage money, plan budgets, and grow their savings. She imagined workshops, online courses, and one-on-one coaching, all designed to empower women to take control of their finances, something she had wished for herself years ago. Her plan was detailed. She listed the skills she already had: financial knowledge from years of managing her own tight budget, social media skills to reach clients online, and a network of friends who trusted her advice. She researched the market, noting that many young women struggled with the same challenges she had faced. She created a strategy for Instagram, TikTok, and WhatsApp to reach them, using engaging posts, live sessions, and easy-to-follow tips that made financial planning less intimidating. Aminata felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. She knew it wouldn't be easy. Starting a business required time, energy, and money she didn't fully have. But the idea of building something for herself, something she controlled, ignited a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. For the first time, she saw a path where she wasn't giving everything away, where her skills and sacrifices could create real opportunity. Savvy Sisters wasn't just a business. It was her chance to claim independence, to turn pain into power, and to finally invest in herself. Aminata walked into yet another meeting with potential investors, her heart pounding. She had prepared for hours rehearsing her pitch for Savvy Sisters, but as soon as she started, she was met with skeptical looks and polite but dismissive questions. "Are you sure the market is ready for this?" one asked. Another chuckled softly. "It's risky. Do you really think young women will pay for financial advice?" Each comment, each doubtful glance chipped away at her confidence. She left the meetings feeling drained and questioning herself. Back at her small apartment, Aminata stared at her laptop screen, doubt creeping in. Was she really capable? Could she turn this idea into something real? But then she thought of her parents, their carefree vacation, and the months she had given up for them. The memory sparked a fire in her chest. She remembered every late night, every skipped meal, every sacrifice. That betrayal, the hurt she had felt, became a fuel instead of a weight. She reminded herself why she started. Not just for independence, but to build something meaningful for herself and other women like her. Skepticism from others couldn't erase her vision. She reworked her pitch, refined her strategy, and decided to keep moving forward one step at a time. The obstacles were real, but so was her determination. Aminata realized that success wouldn't come from waiting for permission or approval. It would come from persistence, resilience, and refusing to let anyone else define her worth. Aminata's phone buzzed one morning with an email that made her hands shake. A well-known West African startup wanted to hire Savvy Sisters for a full financial consultation and training program for their young female employees. This wasn't just any client. It was a name that carried weight, credibility, and attention. She read the email over and over, hardly believing it was real. All the late nights, all the doubts, all the small rejections had led to this moment. She threw herself into the project, designing workshops, creating detailed guides, and planning interactive sessions that would truly empower the young women she was about to work with. The startup was impressed with her professionalism, clarity, and creativity. By the time the program launched, Aminata could feel a shift, not just in her business but in how she saw herself. Savvy Sisters was no longer just an idea. It was a recognized brand. Soon after, media outlets caught wind of the story. Articles and online features highlighted her journey from a young woman who had sacrificed everything for her family to an entrepreneur creating opportunities for other women. Aminata read each piece, feeling a mixture of pride and disbelief. People were noticing her work, her resilience, and her vision. For the first time, her efforts were visible to the world. The breakthrough wasn't just the client. It was the affirmation that she could stand on her own, that her independence and hard work mattered, and that she had turned her anger and betrayal into something powerful and inspiring. Aminata couldn't believe how far Savvy Sisters had come. After the breakthrough with the startup client, more doors opened. Young women across West Africa wanted her guidance, and soon she was expanding the business, opening offices in Accra and Lagos. Each new city brought challenges, finding trustworthy staff, understanding local markets, and building connections, but Aminata faced them head-on, drawing on every lesson she had learned from her own struggles. She made mentoring a core part of the company, taking the time to meet with young women individually, helping them navigate finances, plan for their futures, and believe in their own potential. Alongside the business growth, Aminata began sharing her journey online. She posted behind-the-scenes snapshots of workshops, client success stories, and even her own achievements, like landing major contracts or speaking at events. The response was overwhelming. Messages poured in from women thanking her for advice that changed their lives, while her follower count grew steadily. For the first time, Aminata felt her efforts being recognized publicly, not just privately or silently. Posting her wins wasn't about bragging. It was about showing what was possible. Each story, each post became a way to inspire, connect, and create a community of women supporting women. Aminata felt a deep satisfaction, knowing that her sacrifices had led to something meaningful, not just for herself but for countless others. The business wasn't just thriving. It was becoming a movement, and she was proud to lead it. Aminata's phone rang one evening, and the screen showed her mother's name. She hesitated but answered, curious about what they wanted. Her parents' voices were warm and full of praise, filled with words about how proud they were of her success, and how inspiring it was to see her grow. They mentioned seeing some of her posts online, acting as if they had always supported her dreams, unaware of the struggles she had endured while funding their vacations and keeping silent about their behavior. Aminata listened calmly, her fingers resting lightly on the table. Inside, a part of her wanted to call them out, to let them know the truth about the sacrifices they had taken for granted, but she felt no need. She didn't need their approval or fake admiration. Instead, she spoke with quiet confidence, thanking them for their words without giving them any power over her emotions. She realized that her life, her choices, and her achievements were hers alone. For the first time in years, Aminata felt fully in control of the conversation, and of herself. She didn't stumble over words or lower her tone. She was poised, composed, and unshakable. The dynamic had shifted. She was no longer the girl bending under pressure, giving everything to please others. Her parents' attempt to claim pride couldn't reach her. Aminata knew her worth and she let them speak, not because she needed them to, but because she could afford to listen without needing validation. The calm certainty she felt was liberating, a clear signal of how far she had come. Aminata stood on the balcony of a small event hall in Zanzibar, watching the first group of young women arrive for her new philanthropic initiative. She had chosen this location deliberately, the same region where her parents had flaunted their luxury vacation. The irony wasn't lost on her. This time she wasn't just giving her money away quietly. She was creating real opportunities, helping women gain financial skills, start small businesses, and take control of their futures. The program launched with workshops, mentorship sessions, and networking events. Aminata moved through the crowd, greeting participants, answering questions, and sharing her own story of struggle and resilience. Cameras and smartphones captured the energy, the smiles, and the empowerment in the room. Later, she posted photos online. Groups of young women learning together, Aminata speaking on stage, hands raised in excitement. The captions highlighted her work, the impact she was making, and the difference she was creating in the community. As she scrolled through the posts after the event, Aminata allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. There was no need to call out her parents directly. The contrast was clear. While they had spent money on luxury for themselves, she was investing in others, leaving a lasting impact. Every like, comment, and share felt like a quiet victory, a reminder that her sacrifices had led to something meaningful. For the first time, she felt fully in control of her story, using her success to inspire and uplift, proving that independence and generosity could go hand in hand. Aminata sat quietly in her office, watching the sun set over the city skyline. For a long time, her mind had been tangled with anger, hurt, and disappointment over her parents' betrayal. She thought about the months she had sacrificed, the sleepless nights, and the constant stress of giving everything while receiving nothing in return. At first, the pain had felt heavy and overwhelming, like a weight she couldn't shake. But now, sitting in the calm of her own space, she began to see it differently. Every challenge, every moment of neglect, had taught her something important. She was stronger, sharper, and more determined because of it. She realized that holding on to anger wouldn't change the past or improve her future. The energy she had spent feeling betrayed could be redirected toward building, creating, and achieving. Aminata thought about Savvy Sisters, the young women she was mentoring, and the projects she had yet to start. Her dreams were bigger than any resentment. She wanted to focus on growth, independence, and the impact she could make, not on bitterness that had no place in her journey. Taking a deep breath, she made a quiet promise to herself to prioritize her goals, invest in her future, and embrace the lessons she had learned from hardship. The past would remain a guide, not a chain. Aminata felt a sense of release and clarity, a newfound peace that came from letting go of what couldn't serve her. Betrayal had shaped her, but it would not define her. She was ready to move forward, fully committed to her own path and the life she wanted to build. Aminata walked through the bustling office of Savvy Sisters, smiling as she watched dozens of young women at work, planning workshops, managing clients, and collaborating on projects. What had started as a small idea in her cramped apartment had grown into a thriving business empire across multiple cities. She had built not only a successful consultancy, but also a community where women could learn, grow, and support each other. Mentoring, teaching, and leading had become second nature, and she realized she had become a role model for countless women who had once felt unsure about their futures. Her parents had started to notice the scale of her achievements. Calls came more often, this time with a mix of admiration, surprise, and hesitant praise. Yet no amount of recognition from them could undo the independence she had worked so hard to achieve. Aminata listened politely but knew her life no longer revolved around their approval. She had built her world on her own terms, and that sense of control and freedom felt unshakable. The most powerful realization hit her when she watched her team succeed, each woman growing confident and capable, much like she had learned to be. Her empire wasn't just financial, it was transformative. Aminata felt a deep sense of fulfillment knowing her hard work had created opportunities, not just for herself, but for many others. She had come full circle, from sacrifice and invisibility to leadership and influence, fully empowered and unstoppable in her independence. Aminata sat in a quiet corner of her favorite cafe, laptop open, fingers hovering over the keyboard. She paused, reflecting on everything she had been through, the sacrifices, the betrayal, the doubts, and the victories. Finally, she typed a message she had been carrying in her heart for years. "I gave my all, and it went unseen, but I chose to rise anyway." She posted it online, and almost immediately, messages and reactions poured in from people inspired by her journey. Some shared their own stories of struggle. Others thanked her for showing that resilience and self-belief could lead to real change. With a sense of peace, Aminata closed the laptop and looked out the window. She was no longer weighed down by resentment or the need for approval. Instead, she traveled confidently to new cities, invested in her business, and pursued projects that excited her. Every trip, every meeting, every decision reflected the life she had built for herself. Independent, empowered, and intentional. She no longer measured her worth by anyone else's recognition, only by her own growth and the impact she created. Aminata's story ended not with revenge or bitterness, but with triumph. She had turned pain into power, neglect into motivation, and sacrifice into opportunity. Above all, she had chosen herself, proving that rising on your own terms is the truest kind of success.